Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for coming to join us this evening for what I think is going to be an amazing interview with two of our, most interesting poets at the moment. We've also got this slightly interesting moment in time because the clocks have just changed, and I always feel that we've entered a slightly different time zone when that happens, and maybe it's a good time for a different rhythm and a little bit of poetry. So it's my very great pleasure to introduce former journalist and psychotherapist Mary Mulholland, who founded Red Door Poets and also co-founded and is an editor of The Alchemist's Spoon. She has a Newcastle Poetry School MA in Poetry and is recently back from a month's residency in Finland. Her poems are published in many journals and anthologies, most recently in The Interpreter's House, Under the Radar, Abridged, and forthcoming in Magma and Stand. She's been listed and mentioned in many competitions, most recently as a finalist in this year's Winchester Prize and shortlisted in Bridport, in which she was highly commended last year, when she was also longlisted in the National Poetry Prize. She has two collaborations published by Nine Pens with Vasiliki Albedo and Simon Madrill, All About Our Mothers and All About Our Fathers, and her debut pamphlet, What the Sheep Taught Me, is published by Live Canon. Talking of sheep, she's currently doing a spell of shepherding, zooming in from farm sitting in the West Country and hoping that her internet will remain stable. Mary.
Thank you so much, Leslie. That was a lovely introduction, and welcome everyone to the winter season. It's a real pleasure to open the door to two such prestigious poets, Martin Figura and Helen Ivory. Helen is a poet and visual artist. She edits the magazine Ink, Sweat and Tears, which incidentally was the first place to publish me. And she teaches at UEA and the National Centre for Writing Academy. If you're in London, look out for her poem on the Underground, The Square of the Clockmaker. Her details will be in the chat. And her sixth collection, Constructing a Witch, which came out just this month, just a month ago or this month, which is perfect for this time of year, is out from Blood Axe and builds on her earlier themes of othering and silencing of women. Martin is a poet, performer, photographer and tutor. He came to poetry following careers in accountancy and 25 years in the army. His publications, which are also listed on his in the chat, include Whistle, which was shortlisted for the Ted Hughes Award and explored his traumatic childhood in which his father killed his mother. It's followed by other publications such as Shed and My Name is Mercy, written during the pandemic, and his new collection, The Remaining Men, also with Cinnamon, has been described as a Condition of England book and looks at ordinary people and extraordinary lives. So in a sense, you're both writing about agency. And I wondered if we could start, just kick off this evening with a poem from each of you, perhaps Helen first, followed by Martin, and then we can have some questions. I mean, I can ask you some questions. So first, Helen.
Wow, hello. Sorry, we're sharing one computer because it's just easier like that, so there'll be a little bit of shifting about. Lovely to see so many people, and thank you very much for having this. The poem I'm going to read first is the second poem in Constructing a Witch. And after researching it for ages and writing it for ages, i.e. probably 4 or 5 years, I don't know, what is time anyway, especially during the pandemic, I wanted to kind of get to the idea of, the definitions. What is a witch? And it's lots of things, and these are some of them. So some definitions of witch: carcass of rags, the dead rat stink of old milk, beyond the pale beggar, runt of the litter, gleaner of herbs, hallower of the compass, cunning hedge rider, measurer of fire, midwife of shadows, low vixen with blood on its maw, deliverer of silence to the henhouse. Lighter than a Bible, priestly ink is gravity beneath her flying feet. Her body writes into the sky. Blended with the earth, she wears a moss cloak. Some procure her remedies. She is a scapegoat for bad luck. A childless wraith in a child's picture book, the worst mother man ever invented. The method of kettling troublesome women, a peck of black pepper in the milk and water blether, practitioner of forgotten ways, of rituals, sayer of spells, barefoot earth listener, older than God or television. Thank you. Do you want me to say anything, or do you want?
I thought that Martin was going to go straight on and read this.
Sorry,
okay, I can do that.
You can do that. Hang on, here he comes.
Okay.
Here he is.
Okay.
So we start with My Mother, My Father, which kind of imagines an alternative narrative to the poem about my childhood for my mother and father. My mother, my father. My mother never met my father when 17, did not die at his hands at 32 because he never boarded the ship to Liverpool after the war. He went home to Bitten to recover on the wrong side of history. They walked separate lives down hobbled streets in the stunned aftermath where fate was blind and love letters never blazed across the firm stationery and time was dreary slow, a subterranean river until love struck in the alluvial dark, spark like flint for both of them so many miles apart. I allow them only this coincidence, to both marry on the self-same day they never did. Franz Joseph Figura's face shone like a silver slotty behind his fine moustache, and June Evelyn McCulloch's face shone like half a crown beneath her veil, and happy ever after they were, each with many children, none of whom were me. I am someone else entirely. This was never written. My mother never met my father when 17, did not die at his hands at 32, because he never.
Gold.
Absolutely brilliant. That's a wonderful start. So first of all, you'll have to hold Martin's poem in your head. I'm going to ask Helen a few questions about her book. So the epigraph, I noticed first of all that the epigraph in Constructing a Witch comes from the Anatomical Venus, which also looked at how women are othered. And I gathered that grew out of Waiting for Bluebeard, in which you use myth to explore an abusive relationship. So my first question for you is, how much of the personal is there in this new book? Do you identify with the archetype of witch?
Yes, a little bit. I mean, like back in the day, I would have been in trouble. Should we say this? And I think, lots of people I know do feel a bit, do class themselves as a bit witchy. I think the idea of making something as we do, and the idea of conjuring something from words is a bit spell-like, isn't it? So there's all that kind of thing, and yes, the book does feel personal. And the Bluebeard one, as you say, was about an abusive relationship, and then the Anatomical Venus was about, well, the othering of women and the kind of hysteria, the idea of hysteria. So when I was doing readings from the Bluebeard book, so many women came up to me and said that they have lived with a Bluebeard. They have been made to feel that they are other, that there is something not quite right about them, and kind of gaslit into that. So the Anatomical Venus is more of a kind of a societal gaslighting, and then I think then I focused on the witch, because the witch, I mean, that's just a huge archetype, isn't it? The witch, and within the witch, there's loads of stuff. There's the good and the bad, so you get the polarities, and somebody being a good woman or a bad woman, what that means. So
it's interesting you should say that, because I noticed that my take on this was that the majority of them seem to lean on the more negative stereotypes which you'd get in literature, even which J.K. Rowling uses, and they didn't tend to include too many of the positive aspects of witches, such as the healer, wise woman, and the Jungian idea more. And you don't mention the male equivalent, the sort of godlike wizard. So I'm interested in your choices about that.
Woof, I don't know if they were choices, it's just the way it panned out. I mean, insofar as let men write about wizards, You know, let that's somebody else's project. I'm also interested. I'll be also interested to see a project about the kind of historical, the non-binary people, how historically, you know, they were other, and they would have been outcast as well. So I'm interested in that project as well, but that's not my project.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, I mean, maybe my next book will be featuring on the other side of things. I don't know, but this is just the way that this was leading me.
Absolutely, and often witches are sort of almost regarded as hermaphrodite. They're sort of sexless beings.
Yeah, I suppose so. I think this is why it kind of lent into me writing about the menopause, because when you say sexist, that, I mean, to me that means no longer being able to have children. You know, the purpose of the woman, you know, traditionally was to have children, and then, you know, you've reached that stage, and then what's the point? You know, lots of is an African village. I can't remember exactly where, but there was an article in the Guardian about 2 years ago, and it was a photographic project, and there were women in this village that had been ousted to a witch village because they were thought to be witches, and most of these women were menopausal, or they were had mental health issues, and they were mostly over 50, so they had been kind of ousted out. So I found that kind of interesting, because that's happening now. And then, you know, the idea of the historic cases that I was looking at, it would have been the same old, I think, for, you know, this kind of other, some were not quite fitting in.
Yeah. So really, you found that the witch was sort of almost like a natural step to go to exploring various aspects like menopause then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, enabled me to do that. I didn't really know I was going to, but then that's how it panned out. Because it was happening to me. So it just became a really, really good vehicle to write about a personal thing.
No, I thought that was great, and I think we're going to hear one of those later on. But again, that was there are some positive aspects to menopause once you've gone through it all. So it's like the reclaiming of power.
Yes, yeah,
Right?
yeah. Men stop. That's the one that comes after the pause, isn't it? The stop. Yes, we'll see. We'll see how we're feeling on the other side.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are witches exhausted at this point, or are there going to be the return of the witch?
I think might be a return of the witch. I don't know. I think the witch has always been with me, really, from probably from the Wizard of Oz. You know, that's the massive witch, isn't it, in a lot of people's childhood. And I've actually got a postcard of the shadow of the witch just right there from the Wizard of Oz. I think I always felt a bit. It's just awful, really. Her sister was killed, wasn't she, under a falling house, and she just wanted her sister's shoes. That's all she wanted. So I kind of almost like sided with that. Okay, but because she was green, you know, if she wasn't green. You know, if she'd have been all kind of, you know, fluffy like the pink fairy, then you know, she might have gotten the shoes back.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay, so I think I'm going to turn to Martin now and ask you, moving on from this fear of feminine power in the cultural psyche, Martin's work presents a very different, a very male world, and includes a slightly cynical take on people in power like Tony Blair, David Cameron. And talking of David Cameron, that line in that poem, I particularly love it. I met a man who said ordinary, hardworking people are interested in moving on. And I think your pared back language and the sort of tongue-in-cheek humor of it is just brilliant. So I know you've written a lot since Whistle, which explored your childhood, but is there in The Remaining Men possibly a wish to normalize your life and resonate with other people, that ordinary people do extraordinary things?
Possibly, I don't know, because Whistle never really went away. I mean, I finished it in 2008, but it's still like 1 in 4 of my book sales. I did a couple of university things last year, both around whistle, nothing that I've done since. It's kind of my streets of London. So I found myself kind of, I mean, this book is a kind of reflection, I suppose, on what's gone on in this country in my lifetime, and I'm a part of that. So the opening section is sort of a bit me, and I kind of always wanted to write this alternative narrative for both my parents, really, that it might have been different, that what came out of the darkness of the war and its ultimate repercussions for them, in a way. So that's sort of why I went back to it, I think. It just kind of, they just happened, really. I wasn't planning on it.
Yeah, I mean, I love that first poem, My Mother, My Father, which we've just heard, because you use a lot of the negative to reimagine a story, and that's so powerful. And I also noticed that it's rather like using a photographic term in that, using the negative. So is photographic language something you use a lot in your poetry?
It has been, yeah. I mean, I was a photographer for a long time, and I kind of photographed much like I write, about the same kind of social documentary photographer. And when I was writing Whistle, I kind of used a lexicon kind of photography. It became a very useful metaphorical tool to sort of say the unsayable. So it provided a kind of way of saying things. The photograph, it worked, it worked really well. And if you read the sort of critical writing around photography and around poetry, they're almost interchangeable, with few exceptions. When I was a photographer, I read Raymond Carver's Fires, which is a book about writing. There's some of his poems in there, but there's a number of essays about writing. And I used that as a kind of template as to how to set about making work as a photographer. So they've always been like kind of an interplay between the two disciplines, really.
Yeah, I can hear that. And yeah, and so I mean, you could say that well, what's that common meme? A picture is worth 1,000 words. So what do poems do that photographs can't? So I wonder what you'd say about that.
Well, it's not strictly, but the photographs I took were kind of tableau. They came from conversations with people, and since I did a book on the army, and so then I set up these kind of posed portraits, which are kind of interpretation of what my thoughts were about whatever sort of situation there was, and it's sort of significant set up metaphorically. And it dawned on me when I was doing commission work for the NHS, where I studied the idea of interviewing people became a part of my process as a writer, that it kind of seemed like, that's what I did as a photographer. Why wouldn't you do it as a writer? So a lot of the best lines in the book came from what people said to me. It seemed like a no-brainer, really. It gives it an authenticity. Wonderful. So that kind of came as an epiphany, really, more recently. Yeah.
So I also noticed that this thing about writing the remaining men, it's just it feels like giving voice to the to those who just are ignored or sort of overlooked. And there's that bit you write in Looked After Children that struck me. From time to time, I notice something kindred in certain strangers, how keen we are to please, how some of us overachieve and inspire, ... and have quiet, unremarkable, ordinary lives. And this echoed in Seams, where you say some will do okay, others thrive, and some of you will drown. And is that a sort of is that your general philosophy, that just maybe? Yeah,
I think so. I think the remaining. I just think that is how people are used and discarded, I suppose, and what purpose their lives fall beyond them when the world shifts, like it did in deindustrialization. So I first encountered that as a photographer for Psy Gallery in Newcastle, working in a mining village, which just after the mine closed, which led to the title poem, really image for that. And it just strikes me as that the people who have got the money and who move the money around continue. They don't suddenly find themselves discarded. They just move, and people are treated as raw material. And also about a certain kind of man, I suppose, setting aside the care thing, which is different. That old idea, the stereotype of a man, a manly man, and manly occupations was suddenly just got, and then there was these men left over. And how it was for them. It's not it's not a pushback against the idea of toxicity, masculinity, or any of that. It's about, the impact on that kind of man, I suppose. Yeah. And also, it's wider than that. It's just generally how the world works, isn't it? Once it moves along, and people are raw material like anything else, really. Yeah,
absolutely, and that comes across really really well and very tenderly at times as well. And so, I mean, it's yours and Helen's styles are very different. So I wonder if you have any guidelines for writing about people because I mean, Helen couches hers through myth and fairy tale and things, but I remember Esther Freud, who writes very autobiographically, saying she always followed her father's, Lucian Freud's principle of truth for art's sake. And I just wonder what your principles would be.
I'm not much when something's really personal. I've kind of pushed it past people, or I've changed names. I think Philip Roth says once a family's got a writer in it, it's finished as a family. But I don't do that, and I've kind of I think my poems are largely empathetic, especially, or they are certainly when it comes to people that I know.
Yeah.
And I guess if they weren't, then I wouldn't be bothered about how they felt about it. There's certainly in the past, I mean, I didn't check with my first foster parents who didn't cover themselves in glory, who were relatives and stuff. I had no interest in appeasing them, but generally I'm careful. When I did my show, Dr. Zeman, I showed a script to my first wife, and she said, "Oh, I come across in it really nice." I said, "Yes, you're much nicer in the show than you are in person." And she laughed as well. Yeah, and I was kind of like, so yeah, it was kind of kind. And people don't have a recourse, really, if you've got, however small, a platform is of poetry. The people who are included in my poems don't have the opportunity to answer back, certainly not in that forum and how they're represented. So I'm careful about that as well. And it doesn't seem to hamper what I say, I don't think, because I'm quite an empathetic person, really.
Yeah, I know that comes across. And I mean, for example, in the poem about your daughter Amy, the party hat, you refer to her as she's a shapeshifter, a good witch, which I think is lovely because it's almost like a nod also to Helen and what she
does. It kind of was sort of a bit deliberate, really. Yeah, yeah. So a good witch, yeah.
Well, if you could pass me back to the good witch right now, I was just.
I would, yeah.
I can appear in shadow.
On the hand.
I won't though. That's just too weird, isn't it?
Talking of language, Helen, I thought I might just ask about the register in many of your poems, because it's quite almost baroque, slightly sort of archaic at times. It creates a real witchery feel. For example, in To a Painter, when you say, "How, pray, is your cowskin glue distinct from charming?" And so I'm just curious about your choice of this register.
I think a lot of the texts that I was reading in my research, like the Malleus Maleficarum and, language from other times, I just wanted to get some texture in, and I don't know, just got into the music of it, I think, and kind of trying to find what voice to use to say that poem. And just being a bit playful, I guess, and trying with that voice, and to give the poems a kind of more texture. I think there's quite a lot of registers and texture, both in the voice and the way that the poems look in the book. And I kind of had fun with that nature of experimentation, I guess, because there's quite a few prose poems in here, and I have written some before, but there are more in this.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, I get the playfulness with the endearing when you say, "Come smithy with your scalding iron, unwitch this noise," and you really feel the spell being cast somehow.
Yeah, I think, yeah, language, spelling, it's all connected, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I think it might be time for a second poem from you both. So if you'd like to fire ahead.
I will try and remember what I
Is,
select for my
is it Lilia Zadie? Is she?
Oh yeah, here she is. Should I do a screen share? Would you?
Yeah, why not? Why not? That's great.
To do it before. Let's see if I share the right thing. Hello. So Lilia Sadie. Yeah, she was a person who died during the witch trials. As it turned out, she didn't go to trial proper, but I mean, she would have died under torture. And if you Google the name Lilia Sadie, you will just find an image of a nice looking lady. She's just a friendly lady, because they made her they reconstructed her face reconstructed it from I'll read the poem and you'll see what happened. Also, there's a little section in it where part of her so-called admission to witchcraft was duplication from something somebody else was supposed to have said in another witchcraft trial. So it simply means that whoever was trying her this time thought, oh, there's a nice little sentence that we can put in here. Let's, it just depends, who's got the power, who's got the voice. These aren't her words, these are words that somebody else has written down. Anyway, if you see her face, if you Google her, you will see the Daily Mirror strapline, "Witch who had sex with the devil." Lilia Sadie. And still the clickbait designed to pique a fever, though clicking arrives you at a neighbourly face conjured up forensically. She'd have been 6 foot tall, according to her bones, buried intertidally like suicides, pressed down by a stone to damn reanimation. Such wickedness requires a belt and braces execution. Who's to say the devil will not wake her to bring about more sickness to the fold? A podcast now, and Lilia's confession, we learn, is duplication of another peasant woman's admission some 50 years before. The devil put one hand on the crown of my head, another on the soles of my feet, and claimed everything between as his. Then you learn they lost her skull 100 years ago, and the image of her face is drawn from photographs, and her bones were gathered up as trinkets. Even wood from her coffin you can see in a museum, whittled to a walking stick, fancied up with silver. So it's the idea of a human being as artifact. So Martin, you want Martin to read a poem, and I've stopped sharing, sorry. Hang on, stop, sorry. Very slick, Helen.
Same document.
It's the same document.
You didn't need to do anything.
No, but I do need to open it. It's not open. Why? And hang on, the one that you're using, yeah, that's the one.
Brilliant.
Just bear on it, right?
Yeah.
So Bear came from a commission by the what was the Army Benevolent Fund. It's now the Soldiers Charity, I think, which involved interviewing soldiers with post-traumatic stress disorder and doing a series of poems. And this was Stuart Harris, and he was blown up in Afghanistan, but he'd had various experiences, one of which was finding a bear in a warlord's garden, which kind of provided a good sort of handle on which to hang a poem. So, Bear. Betrayer will happily walk with you, knows your patterns, the roof runs and dead ends of conflict. Conflict will lift you skyward, then lay you down on the broken dirt. Stu woke clean white and wondered if this was hell. The bear in the next bed explained it was Birmingham, and over weeks they reminisced, became firm friends. When it was time, the bear came home with him and was too big for the house. The bear blundered about, breaking ornaments, cracked its head against the light, sent shadows skittering about the walls. The bear brooded, and the children shrank back from its rancid breath, which made the bear roar. The rooms of the house became dead ends. One night, Stu placed his hand into the bear's paw, and together they walked to the shingle edge of the sea and were the most sorrowful sight the sea had ever seen. The sea took pity and let them step into her low swell. They clung together until the sea murmured home. The bear struck out for the moonlit horizon. Stu stood alone on the kitchen floor. Water pooled about him. He was so tired, his own undone shoelaces were an unfathomable conundrum.
Wow, that's stunning. Well, this time I'm going to stay with Martin. So you'll have to hold Lily Sadie in your heads till I come back to Helen. So Martin, that was a really powerful poem, and I noticed that I think it's the one just after it, or is it the one just before it? The sea. You've got a line: Stu's mum drank her tea, then waved him off, wished him love and to have a nice time. And this ability to be so understated, pared back, factual, the stark reality. I like to quote, I found somewhere that you said, the bigger the story, the plainer the language. And I'm just wondering, I was an army child. I'm just wondering was this influenced by your time in the army, where there's just no place for sentiment?
Not so much that as just, obviously I had that background, so I inhabited that world for quite a long time. So I kind of understood the world and the people that inhabit it. But those kind of, particularly the things you quoted, when you're interviewing people about their experiences, with the NHS during COVID and what have you, but mostly they say cliches 95% of the time. It's like it was a roller coaster, we're all in it together, we're all a team and everything. But just occasionally things come out that are kind of there, that's better than anything you could come up with in your imagination. Both, they reach beyond themselves as a phrase, and something like Stu's mum, sort of, which he obviously remembered his mum seeing him off and sort of saying, "Oh, have a nice time," and also the idea of the bear. As soon as you hear something like that, you go, you can do something with that, and the shoelace. The line about his own shoelaces being an unfathomable conundrum. Stu, when I was talking to Stu, he says, remembers at the absolute low point. He remembers looking down in the morning with his shoes and looking at his undone shoelaces and, not knowing what on earth to do, really.
Wow.
And that's kind of a heart, really, it still kind of, breaks me now, thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I think you say also somewhere, trauma is a wound hardened to an invisible scar, insensitive to touch. And you really feel that with this, that there is, it's almost bigger than anyone can imagine to have to cope with it, as is your story too. So I suppose through that, you just go to the understated. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, well, I've always done that with Whistle. I mean, I sort of do quite a lot of workshops with people writing about difficult stuff. And I'm always kind of, if you've got something tough to say, the simpler and more straightforward you say it, the more power it has, definitely. There's an NHS poem about a son and father having their last conversation on the phone, and the nurse holding the thing where the father says, when to, tells the son when to plant out the begonias and not to do it too soon. And then the son just says, "I'm going to miss you, Dad." And he says, "You can do this, son." I mean, you wouldn't dare to come up with anything like that. And it's so simple and ordinary, but no amount of drama or over egging and talk of sorrow and all the rest of it could match that, I don't think so. It's always kind of stuck with me that's the way to go. Yeah.
Absolutely. Though I would not want the listeners who haven't read the book to think that it's all about this, because there's also a lot of humor. There's also a lot of humor in your poem. And so it's a really powerful collection. And so we've talked a bit about how art. I can't, who is the person on the front? I can't remember. I think
he's one of the remaining men. That's from it's a picture I took as part of a picture I took as part of the residency in the mining village.
Ah, okay.
So actually one of the remaining men. Yeah.
That's really strong. So I thought I might then switch back to Helen to ask about the Pendle witch trials. These make fascinating reading, shocking reading. I've climbed Pendle Hill, so I know exactly where you are with that. And of course the religious aspect was also prevalent at the time, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And awful stories about how it all just mushroomed, and these people were sort of taken and tried. But there was as a sideline, I just was thinking in Margaret Johnson, there's that line, if I was not a witch, how did I meet the night's wings? How did I fly? And it made me wonder if flying was metaphorical, if the witches used magic mushrooms. Maybe she was.
Yeah, I think they did. I think they also flying ointment as well. Yeah, so
what is flying ointment?
I have no idea. I mean, you can buy it online. You know, there are websites that you can procure. I think you need a broomstick as well.
Okay.
And I think also you need to take it internally as well. And I think there's kind of roothings and broomsticks and internal. I think that you know, that there was all that kind of, you know, women astride broomsticks and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, but yeah, you can procure flying ointment. And have you seen the film A Field in England?
No, I don't think so.
That's The Hunt for, well, it's kind of magic mushrooms. When is it set? It's set in the English Civil War. And it's just so trippy, and they are definitely on mushrooms, and it's black and white, and it's an amazing film. I don't know how, you know, I can't explain it anyway. It's a very good film.
I'll try and check it out. But that leads me on to think about the spells, because you, in disarming spells and in remedy, you include things like urine, a fingernail, rose thorns, wine, and rusty bits of wire or something. So are these real spells, or have you made them up? Or?
Yeah, no, that you would put in things like that. If you know those where you can get Bellarmine bottles, they're witch bottles, and they're to store to capture witches in, and you put in things that you think that the witches might like wine, and then you have to put in stuff from yourself like fingernails. And the idea is that when they're in their flying cells, they will be caught in the witch's bottle, and then you put the stopper down, and you put it in part of your property, or, you know, at the edge of your property. They're found all over the place. You know, you find them bricked up in walls sometimes. We've just been to revisit actually in the Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford. There's a witch bottle there. It's just a little glass bottle. No, actually, it's not a little glass bottle. This one is a big. I don't know what it's made of, but it's kind of silvery looking. It's very fancy, but it's said to contain a witch, and she got caught in there. So there you go. I mean, that has a flying element too, because, you know, when someone moves from one shape to another, that's when you're supposed to catch her, when she's not of this world, betwixt.
Oh, we're about that sort of time, aren't we, with the liminal?
We're very much
wild. Yeah. So I also wanted to flag up the fact that both you and Martin include illustrations in your books, and you also collages, such as you've done in previous books. Was this idea influenced by your liking for Bagpuss when you were little? Collect things.
Everything comes from Bagpuss. He's my spirit animal. I have a Bagpuss in my studio. I don't know, it probably was. I mean, there's Bagpuss and lots of other kind of Eastern European kind of animations and kind of oddness that were always around on at tea time when I was a child. So I think my love of animation and all that kind of stuff. But the element of Bagpuss, it's fixing and restoring, you know, making stuff up and kind of rescuing things. I mean, so the collages in the book here's one of them. It's made on the backboard of an old book, and the old book, I mean, it was falling apart, so I thought I would repurpose it. It's got some really, really nice paper in it as well. And the photograph, I mean, I don't know if you can see, but that photograph of that lady, she is feeding birds, and it's just beautiful. And I've had that photograph for maybe 15 years, and I didn't know what to do with it. And then it felt right to use it as a collage for this book. So yeah, I have drawers. I open drawers and in my studio, and I find things that and repurpose them. And the words come from various sources as well. Different diction, like fairy tale or encyclopedia, different ways of talking. So I like the kind of the buzz and the fizzle that happens when you juxtapose different things.
Absolutely. And I gather the front cover was a sculpture you made, and then Martin photographed it. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's here.
Oh, wow.
It's a doll with but kind of plaster of Paris kind of thing on her. Yeah, Martin photographed her, and
I love the reflection, the way he's got the reflection that mirrored.
Yeah, that works really well. And the crows in the background, they are from Buckingham Car, which is local to us. Mark Cockett in Crow Country, he drove everyone towards Buckingham Car because at dusk at a certain time of year, like probably around about now actually, there's 10,000 crows, whatever creatures, rooks. It's called Crow Country, but they're rooks. They gather together in all these fields, and you kind of go and you can be amongst them. And at one point, one crow says, "Come on," and then they all go, and they're all over your head. It's like being under the sea. It's amazing. So yeah, the photograph was taken from that time, and the color was pretty much how it was, isn't it? That's the color. You didn't do anything with the color. Didn't kind of have to do anything. So yeah, that was and then he made the reflection, and then Neil did the same with the words, on the front. Yeah,
that works really well. So I'd like to bring Martin in alongside you now, and because I'd like to ask you both now about what it's like to be in a poetry relationship. So a lot of poets have another life in which partners, family and friends take no interest. And then there are some people I've spoken to who find a poetry relationship can bring its own problems, with one partner being jealous or competitive. And I came across another poet couple who didn't even share poetry with each other. So what is it like for you with the pros and cons, if you don't mind sharing?
It's nothing we've ever really had to think too much about. We kind of support each other. Obviously, I think for me, it's sort of I've got a living editor literally 3 foot from my desk and a first reader, but also the sort of my interests are sort of socio-political, whereas Helen's are sort of, I suppose, folkloric and mythology.
I don't know, it's real. These are real people.
Well, I know, but the sort of, you draw more from that, whereas I draw from the sort of contemporary social political, and I can sort of nip over and nip things from what Helen's been talking about and doing and what have you. So that's useful, and we just get on,
Yeah, we've been on the road, man, haven't we, for ages?
And it's sort of, I came more, I suppose, to start from a more performance thing, but I've sort of slipped onto the page, and so obviously Helen's been on that. So, but like, I still do the sort of, some rumbustious, but Helen can inhabit that world comfortably enough, and likewise, I can turn up with Blood Axe Poets and not make a complete tit of myself. Yeah, it's kind of
your language though. You need to watch your language.
Sorry,
Martin.
Yeah, this is where I let myself down. But anyway, that's what I think.
Well, that's what. Well, no, I think. I mean, I have been in relationships before where people are, I was kind of in a different world, and with this Bluebeard person that I never name. And he was kind of threatened by it all, really. Anything, my creative life, any friends outside of him, actually. Any other people. So that's my other, long relationship. Although we've been together for 20 years now, haven't we?
20 years.
Yeah.
I thought when we got together, Helen was a Blood Axe poet, and I didn't really have a publication. So I was, my initial thoughts were, it's all over, Figura. You would now be a Helen Ivory's consort, and I was kind of okay with that because I like Helen Ivory quite a lot, and so actually I've survived much better than I expected. Yeah, it's.
Martin, you were primarily a performance poet before you became a written poet, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I sort of started, I think, to show off, and I still like showing off, and I enjoy reading very much. I enjoy doing events very much. That's a sort of essential part of it for me. I think, yeah, but you just, you grow up a bit, don't you? That's very disparaging to performance poets, but if you're going to write something and make the effort of writing, I suppose I had something serious to write about as well. So, and then, it has to be worthwhile, I suppose.
So do you sit at the same desk? So there's a kitchen table or something?
Literally.
Martin's got a desk over there.
Is this your desk, Helen?
This is my desk. The light's nicer here. It's warmer. Yeah. We looked a bit weird in the other.
This is the 60 centimeters from Helen's desk to the end of my desk.
And he does have to wear headphones sometimes, don't you, Martin? You like a bit more noise than I do.
It's a room upstairs, Helen.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Sometimes and writes on a laptop, which I can't do for some reason. Yeah.
And I was also going to ask you, because you do so much, you two, because you're teaching, you're performing, you're touring, you're writing, you do cafe writers, I think. You used to do the butchery. Helen, you do Ink, Sweat and Tears. How did it fit into? Are you both really adept at juggling?
Well, we handed cafe writers over to kind of lured younger people onto the committee, and then locked the door and left, or left and locked the door.
That was just before the pandemic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then when we started doing live from the butchery, like, I don't know, 4 months into the pandemic.
Well, really early on, and there wasn't much of that going on at the time, so we had time on our hands then.
Yeah.
I mean, we started doing it. It didn't really start off as a.
It was an accident.
It was an accident because we both had our new books out, our last books, and I think I put on Facebook if Martin and me did a gig on Zoom, because Zoom was so new. People didn't know about Zoom then. If we did a gig on Zoom, would anyone come? And about 80 people came. And then they were asking, what are we going to do next? So then we just started inviting other people, didn't we?
We knew people, and it turns out, people who are normally too busy weren't busy. And we're glad. And we were able to pay people. People paid what you can and what have you. And we did a fundraiser for Ukraine, and we did at Christmas our events were for the sort of local homeless charity, and we raised quite a lot of money, a couple of grand and stuff. And then at the end of lockdown, other people had started doing it and what have you, and it kind of petered out a little bit, so we stopped.
Oh, brilliant. So that was really fascinating. I wonder if, looking at the time, we could have a third poem from you both.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll let you do that.
Oh no. Hang on. I'm gonna share, but I need to find my poem. That's not. Okay. So here's one of the aforementioned menopausey type poems. This one needs no introduction. So many euphemisms. The change. You sit inside yourself and your body does its thing. 1 minute, it's a honeypot of estrogen. The next, your head you had grown up with is a crucible, and the words flushes and flashes don't touch the sides of this urge to run clear of their chassis. The clothes in your wardrobe carry a whisper of mutton from a source buried deep inside language. You smear Lady Danger on muttony chops, and everywhere advice on how to hide your arms. Heaven forfend you make a spectacle of your collagen depletion. Every night your hormones throw a party you don't want to attend, messing with the levels like a bad DJ. You read that tinnitus is affected by estrogen's jitterbug, that not enough research has been done. Your skin is a rubber doll plumped up with lava that stumbled into a cold store at 4 a.m. Martin.
So this is the title poem, and I say before it comes from that photographic commission that I had when I spent a few weeks up in the northeast of England in what was a mining village, and I noticed that there were men just sort of stood around on the pavement, looking out into the middle distance, seemingly without purpose. The remaining men. When the men surfaced for the last time and dispersed, some were left over. These men wandered about the town until they each found their own particular sweet spot. Then they just stood there, looking out over the scarred coast through red-rimmed eyes to the rough brown sea. As the days went by, people gave up asking them why so still and could they fetch someone or something. They became like street signage, A-boards, park prams or tied-up dogs, something to be manoeuvred around. As the months went by, the men became hardened to difficult weather, filling their coat pockets with hail. During the great storm of '87, their caps blew off and went cartwheeling down the streets with bin lids. As the years went by, the slag heaps faded to green and saplings were planted. The men began to petrify into monuments. When the new road for the business park went through, a lot of them were tipped back onto trolleys, like the ones railway porters used to use, then loaded onto flatbed trucks with the traffic cones. Most were broken down for aggregate. The lucky ones were sold off as novelty porch lights and stood outside front doors on the new estate, illuminating small front lawns and driveways. As the decades went by, saplings became sycamores and elms and named colliery wood. In autumn, the early morning light on them was glorious, and cycle paths made their way there. The remaining men were defaced by graffiti and badly worn by then. Many considered them to be an eyesore. When children asked what they were, not everyone could remember, and of those that did, few were believed. As the centuries went by, they all but disappeared. Only the circle in the park remained. Archaeologists and historians disagree about how they came to be there and what they might have been used for.
Well, that's such a chilling reality on how history just gets written and erased and everything. I think that's just really chilling. I love it. And then Helen, with your book as well. I remember that, I think there's a poem, 13 Million, where you say this whole thing was nearly never a thing when you first sat down to write this and deleted the words before you hit save.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's just like that. Yeah, that is kind of about well, women of a certain age are supposed to be invisible, aren't they? So it was part of that kind of fading out. Not even saving, not even.
So it's a bit like that. Well, I want to, at this point, open the conversation up to everyone in the room who's been listening. So quietly, has anybody got a question that they are burning to ask? And if my co-host could help with this.
Yeah, we do have a question in the chat. We've got a question for you both. Have you ever collaborated on a poem or poems, I suppose?
Not with both as writers. When I was a photographer, we did a project at a nightclub. We were artists in residence at Lava Ignite nightclub. That was fun. Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah,
lots of really kind of drunk, fun people.
Young people. So we've done that, but I think
that was quite a long time ago, isn't it?
Yeah, neither of us have asked the other or felt compelled to.
We've both got our own things, haven't we?
Yeah, I think so. No.
And you've made some shows as well, so you've been focused on that.
Yeah.
So, but I've worked with you. I've made props for your shows.
Yeah. So Helen's worked as a sort of prop maker on my last show. So in that sense, but not both as writers together. We haven't done anything like that together. But
I had a question actually. Oh, sorry, you finished. I had a question about whether there were other poetry partnerships that you admire or that you are aware of that you particularly like.
Well, Deb Almert and Jim Sheard, who run the Poetry Pharmacy, just like what they do, their energy, everything about them. Also Jill and Mark Connors as well. Yeah,
who do a lot, and for other writers as well. And then there's people like Sophie Collins and Sam Riviere. and they tend to operate less as a couple as we do, and I think Mark and the other, and there's John Agard, of course, and Ruth. No.
Great.
Another a woman. I can't remember John Agard's partner, but
Is it Grace someone or other?
Grace
Nichols.
Thank
Grace
you.
Nichols. Yeah.
Are there any more questions that anybody would like to ask? We could open that up for a moment. We have a couple of minutes. Any questions?
Have you got any thoughts about where you see your poetry going onwards? Perhaps for Martin, especially, because I think Helen's sort of with the witches still.
Yeah, I'm with the witches.
Oh, well, I know what I'm going to do, and kind of the remaining men. I haven't really thought beyond in terms of sort of general speed. There's nothing, I thought that, that was a kind of reckoning, and I'm kind of happy with that. But there's an element, there's scattered in the last couple of books, there's a couple of Amy poems. My daughter Amy has Down syndrome, and she's now in her early 40s. And the section my last show, Dr. Zena's Catastrophe Machine, was about Amy, and it's with visuals and soundscape and everything. And people really relate that to, well, she's got quite the following on social media, on Facebook, and we've been really close from the very beginning, and her language is very limited and stuff, and what we do is very limited, but there's this kind of incredible bond that seems to be something special, and it plays to my strengths in able to communicate that. There's a lot of humor in it. She's brilliant, unreasonable, and magnificent, but she's got all the components of a drama. She nearly died at one point and what have you, and I think that there's something to say there as well, both about Down syndrome and this sort of existential threat to it, I suppose, through testing, and also in how our relationship has moved as Amy moves into middle age and menopause and what have you, and how lockdown affected our relationship, and just the nature of a relationship reduced to such sort of basic instincts between us, and how it's sustained itself over 40 years, and how it kind of seems still to be vital to both of us. So that's the thing I'm going to begin in the new year, most likely. Yeah, I'm building on something that's already there. There's the core there, so it's just widening the context, I think, and making it a show of it on its own. Yeah.
We've got one last question about, does Helen have a coven of 12 other witchy writers that she collaborates with?
Well, I do have a Zoom poetry group called The Coven, and so it's a Facebook group, and then so I do run coven workshops. So if anyone wants to join my coven, please please contact me on
limit, not 12 only.
Yeah, well, yeah, there tend to be 12. I don't know. We've run. This will be the 5th session. I've got one on Saturday. I usually try and do 2 because we've been away so much, 2 over a weekend. Because we've been away so much, it's been really impossible to do that. So we usually have about kind of 15 actually. But yeah, it's a smaller group this time because I haven't been very good at coordinating things. I also see there's another comment about the Rosemary talks about the Camille Rouse Pendle Rich poems. Yes, I do know those, and I love them, and I'd really love to hear her read them because they are just the way that they sound. I mean, I read them out loud because I do read poems out loud to myself when I'm reading a book, and it's just one of my, it's just magical, the whole thing. It's one of those beautiful, is it an Emma Press book? So it's a small thing. It's often on my desk actually. I don't know where it is now. Maybe it's underneath. I had to tidy up because of the dust.
I could have visions of you each reading to each other in the evening. How lovely is that?
We're mostly in the morning in bed before we get up. We'll have a couple of collections on the go, and that's tends to be when we read for about half an hour to an hour before we get up and face the day.
Yeah.
I've got a whole host of other questions, but she'll have to remain for another time because we're running out of time now. But it just remains for me to thank you both so much, Helen and Martin, for your brilliant reading and your generous sharing of thoughts and ideas in your time. And I wish you well on your ongoing tour. And thank you to the audience for coming. Now go out and buy these books. And I'll hand over to Leslie to just wrap us up for the evening. Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you, Mary, for such amazing questions and really engaging and wide-ranging topics that we've been able to think about. And thank you, obviously, to Helen and Martin for such diverse poems and interesting answers to those, and to all our audience coming along.